They journeyed extensively until they discovered the witch doctor, who was hidden deep within the heart of the forest. The witch doctor welcomed them with a solemn demeanor, his eyes filled with wisdom and sorrow. He listened carefully as they shared Adam's troubles, his expression serious. Once upon a time, in a distant kingdom located in the eastern region of Nigeria, there lived a princess named Adamma. She was the cherished daughter of King Agri and Queen Ma. Adamma had a younger sister named Adiku, who was her closest friend. Adamma was renowned throughout the kingdom for her beauty, intelligence, and kindness. She spent her days wandering the palace gardens, playing with her sister, and assisting the villagers whenever possible. One fateful night, Adamma awoke feeling peculiar. She gazed into the mirror and gasped in horror. Her reflection revealed a round face and a protruding belly. "What is happening to me?" she cried out, her voice quivering with fear. Hearing her distress, King Agri and Queen Ma rushed to her side, followed closely by Adiku. They were stunned to see their typically slender and graceful daughter looking so different. "What is wrong, Adamma?" Queen Ma inquired, her heart aching at the sight of her daughter's tears. "I do not know, mother," Adamma replied, her voice trembling. "I woke up like this, and I feel so strange." King Agri paced the room, his brow furrowed with concern. "We must discover the cause of this," he declared, his voice resolute. The royal family spent the night comforting Adamma, assuring her that they would find a solution by morning. As dawn broke, King Agri summoned the village's chief priest, hoping he would have answers. The chief priest arrived at the palace, his face serious with concern. He performed rituals and consulted the gods, but to everyone's disappointment, he announced that the gods had not communicated with him regarding Adamma's condition. "We must continue our search," King Agri stated, his voice laden with disappointment. "We cannot relent until we discover a cure for our cherished daughter." Days morphed into weeks, yet no solution appeared on the horizon. The king and queen sought assistance from physicians across the land, but none could elucidate Adam's transformation. Adamma felt imprisoned within her own body, unable to comprehend the reasons behind her plight. She yearned to traverse the kingdom, to bask in the sunlight and feel the breeze in her hair, yet she was restricted to the palace confines to evade the stares and the murmurs of the villagers. Despite her sorrow, Adamma found solace in the company of her sister, Adiku. Adiku remained by her side, sharing stories and bringing laughter even during the bleakest moments. "Please do not be sad, sister," Adiku would say, her eyes radiating love and compassion. "We'll discover a way to restore your health, I promise." Adamma offered a faint smile, appreciative of her sister's unwavering support. Together, they envisioned the day when Adamma would roam the kingdom freely once more. As time progressed, Adamma's spirit began to uplift. She found joy in simple pleasures, such as watching the sunrise from her window or listening to the birds serenade in the palace gardens. Although she remained concealed from the villagers, Adamma's heart brimmed with affection for her family and her kingdom, and deep within, she clung to the hope that one day she would reclaim her true self. After spending countless days confined within the palace walls, Princess Adamma grew weary of being cooped up indoors, longing for the familiar faces and laughter of her friends in the village. She resolved to sneak out for a brief visit, slipping past the palace guards and making her way to the village square where her friends frequently gathered. However, as soon as they caught sight of her, their laughter transformed into shocked gasps. "Look at Adamma. What has happened to her?" they whispered among themselves, their eyes wide with disbelief. Wide with surprise, Adam's heart sank as she realized her friends were staring at her altered appearance. Tears welled up in her eyes as they began to mock and ridicule her. "That man looks so funny now. She's so fat and ugly," they jeered, their words piercing like arrows. Unable to bear their hurtful remarks, Adamma turned and fled back to the safety of the palace. Running to her room, she collapsed onto her bed, sobbing uncontrollably. King Ai and Queen Ma rushed to their daughter's side, their hearts breaking at the sight of her tears. "What happened, my dear?" the queen asked, her voice gentle with concern. Between sobs, Adamma recounted the painful encounter with her friends, the stinging insults ringing in her ears. "We told you not to go out, Adamma," King Agi said, his voice heavy with regret. "We must find a solution to this before you can venture beyond the palace walls again." Adak, who had been listening quietly, felt a surge of sadness for her sister. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Adamma, offering what little comfort she could. "Don't worry, Adamma," Adak whispered, her voice filled with empathy. "We'll find a way to make things right again, I promise." Adamma clung to her sister, grateful for her unwavering support. Despite the pain of rejection, she knew she was not alone as long as she had Adak by her side. Meanwhile, King Agrid doubled his efforts to find a cure for his daughter's mysterious condition. He consulted with wise men and healers from distant lands, hoping that someone would have the answer. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no breakthrough. But the royal family refused to lose hope, knowing they would do whatever it took to restore Adamma to her former self. As they waited for a solution, Adamma found solace in the love and companionship of her family. Though she longed to explore the world beyond the palace walls, she understood that her safety and well-being were paramount. The well-being of Princess Adamma was of utmost importance, and she was enveloped by the warmth and affection of her loved ones. Patiently, she awaited the day when she would finally be liberated from the curse that had afflicted her. As days transformed into weeks and weeks into months, Princess Adamma's condition appeared to deteriorate, despite the efforts of her parents and the villagers. Her weight continued to rise at an alarming rate. Each night, Adamma wept herself to sleep, her once joyful spirit now burdened by the weight of her affliction. The king and queen grew weary and desperate, their hearts heavy with sorrow. "We must find a solution," the queen said to the king one evening, her voice trembling with concern. "A daughter cannot continue like this." King Agi nodded, his brow furrowed with worry. "I will do whatever it takes to save our daughter," he vowed, his voice filled with determination. Thus, the king and queen sought out a powerful witch doctor, reputed to possess knowledge of ancient remedies and mystical cures. They journeyed far and wide until they discovered the witch doctor, who was secluded deep within the forest. The witch doctor greeted them solemnly, his eyes reflecting wisdom and sorrow. He listened intently as they recounted Adamma's plight, his expression grave. After a moment of deep contemplation, the witch doctor spoke in a voice laden with significance. "Your daughter is under a curse," he stated, sending shivers down their spines. "Only you, the king and queen, have the power to reverse what has been done." The king and queen exchanged bewildered glances, struggling to grasp the witch doctor's cryptic message. "What must we do?" King Agi inquired, his voice barely above a whisper. However, the witch doctor's face remained impassive. "Go home and wait for the appointed time," he replied. "The gods will reveal their plan in due course." Feeling more perplexed than ever, the king and queen expressed their gratitude to the witch doctor, and you made your way back to the palace, and despite their uncertainty, they held on to the hope that the gods would intervene and rescue their cherished daughter. As they awaited the guidance of the gods, Adamma's condition took a turn for the worse. Not only was she gaining weight rapidly, but her appetite had become insatiable. She devoured every morsel of food in the palace, her hunger seemingly bottomless. The king and queen watched helplessly as their daughter consumed meal after meal, her once slender frame now bloated and swollen. Their worries deepened with each passing day, knowing they were powerless to halt the relentless progression of her affliction. "It appears as if she is possessed by a voracious spirit," Qua whispered to King Agri one evening, her eyes brimming with tears. King Agri nodded, his heart heavy with sorrow. "We must remain strong," he said, his voice laced with sadness. "We cannot lose hope, no matter how dire the situation may seem." Thus, the king and queen kept vigil by their daughter's side, praying for a miracle that would end her suffering. However, as Adamma's condition continued to deteriorate, they could only watch in anguish, their hearts breaking with each passing day. As time stretched on, Princess Adamma's condition worsened. She was no longer able to move freely and lay confined to her bed, her once agile body now burdened by layers of excess fat. The maids attended to her every need, lifting her gently and caring for her with tenderness. Adamma's tears flowed freely as she pleaded with her parents for help, her voice choked with desperation. Yet, despite their anguish, King Agri and Queen En were powerless to alleviate their daughter's suffering. In a final desperate attempt to save Adamma, King Agri summoned the village's chief priest once more. With a heavy heart, he implored the priest for guidance, hoping against hope for a solution to their daughter's plight. The chief priest arrived at the palace was filled with a grave expression as he listened to the king's plea. After performing rituals and consulting the spirit, he spoke in a solemn tone, declaring that the presence was under a cause. His words echoed in the silent chamber, but the source of this cause lay within the hearts of the king and queen. King Agri and Queen En exchanged startled glances, their minds racing as they attempted to comprehend the priest's words. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear. The chief priest fixed them with a piercing gaze. "You must search your hearts and confess any wrongdoing from the past," he said. "Only then can the cause be lifted and your daughter be healed." With heavy hearts, the king and queen searched their memories, trying to recall any past misdeeds that could have led to Adam's suffering. However, despite their efforts, they could not remember anything that would justify such a terrible fate. "We have done nothing wrong to deserve this," Queen Norma protested, her voice filled with frustration. But the chief priest shook his head solemnly. "The gods' judgment is not always clear to us mortals," he said. "You must be honest with yourselves and with the gods if you wish to save your daughter." As the chief priest departed, he left the royal family grappling with his words. King Agri and Queen Ma felt a sense of unease settle over them. Could it be possible that they were somehow responsible for Adam's suffering? Days passed in a blur of worry and uncertainty as the king and queen wrestled with their conscience. They searched their hearts for any hint of wrongdoing, but despite their efforts, they could find no answers. It was as if the past had been wiped clean. King Agri said to Queen En one evening, his voice heavy with despair. Queen En nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't understand how this could have happened," she whispered. Yet, no matter how hard they tried, the king and queen could not shake the feeling that they were missing something, some hidden truths that held the key to Adam's salvation. And so, as Adamma lay confined to her bed, her cries resonating throughout the palace halls. The royal family found themselves ensnared in a web of certainty and fear, their hearts weighed down by the anguish of their daughter's suffering. One night, as Princess Attica drifted into slumber, she entered a peculiar dream. In this dream, she was sprinting through a dark forest, pursued by a young lady whose cries echoed in the night. Attica felt her heart racing in her chest, her breaths coming in short gasps. The girl's voice grew increasingly urgent, imploring Attica to wait for her. Finally, Attica mustered the courage to halt and turn around. Before her stood a ghostly figure, her eye sockets empty, yet filled with tears of blood. A frightened Attica inquired, "Who are you?" The ghostly girl responded, her voice heavy with sorrow. "My name is Oma. Your parents killed me." Attica's heart raced with fear as she absorbed the girl's words. "I cured them," the girl continued, "and now your sister suffers because of their sins. If they do not confess, you will endure the same fate." Before Attica could pose any further questions, the ghostly figure vanished, leaving her alone in the darkness. Startled, Attica awoke, her heart still pounding in her chest. Terrified, she hurried to her sister's room to check on her, finding Adamma still confined to her bed, tears streaming down her face. Overwhelmed by despair, Attica, with tears in her eyes, rushed to her parents' chambers, her mind swirling with fear and confusion. Bursting into the room, she recounted her dream to them, her voice quivering with emotion. "Who is Yumina?" she asked, her eyes searching their faces for answers. King Agri and Queen exchanged alarmed glances, their hearts racing with dread. "Where did you hear that name?" they asked, their voices barely above a whisper. Attica recounted her dream once more, urgency lacing her words as she said, You killed her, her eyes wide with fear, and now she's cursing our family." The king and queen's faces paled as they listened to Attica's words. It is possible that their past sins had returned to haunt them, manifesting in their daughter's suffering. Unable to speak, they exchanged shocked glances, their minds racing with the implications of Adu's revelation. As the truth of Oma's curse hung heavily in the air, the royal family faced a choice: to confront the sins of their past and seek redemption, or to continue living in denial while watching their family be consumed by darkness. As the first light of dawn crept into the palace, King Agri and Queen Ma found themselves unable to shake off the weight of the looming problem. Adak, once their lively and spirited daughter, now moved through the palace like a shadow, her sadness casting a pall over their hearts, filled with shame and guilt. The king and queen struggled to muster the courage to confront their past sins. Each day brought fresh reminders of their failure to act, and with each passing moment, Adu's condition worsened. One morning, as the sun rose high in the sky, she fell gravely ill. Her skin turned pale, and her breathing became shallow. In a panic, King Agri summoned the village's chief priest, hoping against hope that he would have a solution for their daughter's plight. When the chief priest arrived, his face grave with concern, he wasted no time in addressing the king and queen. "Are you ready to confess your sins?" he asked, his voice steady. King Agri and Queen Ma exchanged frightened glances, their hearts heavy with dread. "We have no choice," Queen Ma whispered, her voice trembling with fear. And so, with heavy hearts and trembling hands, they began to recount the story of Yamina, the maid who had once served in the king's palace. They spoke of her forbidden love for the chief god and of their own jealousy and rage at her pregnancy. In a fit of anger, they had sentenced Yamina to death, condemning her to a fate far worse than she deserved. And when the chief guard had taken his own life due to overwhelming grief and guilt, they had concealed their crime, hiding the truth from the world. As they confessed their sins to the chief priest, the burden of their guilt weighed heavily upon them. Tears streamed down their faces as they pleaded for forgiveness, their voices filled with remorse. However, their confession was met with disappointment and anger from the villagers who had once trusted and respected their king and queen. They shook their heads in disbelief, unable to grasp the extent of the royal couple's betrayal. The chief priest listened solemnly to their confession, his eyes filled with sorrow. "You must seek forgiveness from Oma's village," he said, his voice laden with significance. "Her spirit is angry, and she will not find peace until she has exacted her revenge." With trembling hearts, King Agri and Queen Norma realized they had no choice but to heed the chief priest's words. Gathering what little courage remained, they prepared to embark on a journey to Mina's village, hoping against hope to make amends for their past sins. The sun rose on a new day as the king and queen, accompanied by a group of village elders, set out on their journey to Mina's village, their hearts heavy with guilt and fear. They traveled through wind and path and then the forest until they reached the outskirts of a TT kingdom. However, as they approached the village, they were met with anger and hostility from the villagers. News of their past deeds had spread like wildfire, and the people of TT were outraged by the injustice done to their daughter. Shouts and jeers filled the air as the villagers chased the royal entourage away, warning them never to return to TT Kingdom. Trembling with fear, the king and queen fled back to their own village, their hearts burdened with shame and regret. Upon their return, tragedy struck with a force that shook the kingdom to its core. Adak, the beloved second princess, succumbed to her illness after suffering violent convulsions. The king and queen wept bitterly as they cradled their lifeless daughter in their arms, their grief overwhelming. Princess Adamma, unable to rise from her bed, cried out in anguish over the loss of her beloved sister. Her heart shattered into a million pieces as she realized she would never again see Attica smile or hear her laughter. The village was engulfed in turmoil and mourning as news of Dee's death spread throughout the kingdom. The once vibrant streets fell silent, the air thick with sorrow and grief. Neighbors gathered to extend their condolences to the grieving royal family, but their words offered little comfort to the king and queen, whose hearts were consumed by guilt and sorrow. "We have brought this upon ourselves," Kwama whispered through her tears, her voice heavy with anguish. King Agra nodded solemnly, his face etched with pain. "We can never forgive ourselves for what we have done," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. As they mourned their daughter's loss, the king and queen understood that they could never undo their past mistakes. Yet, in the depths of their grief, they vowed to honor Attica's memory by seeking forgiveness and redemption for the sins that had brought such tragedy upon their family. Thus, as the kingdom mourned the loss of one of its own, the royal family faced an uncertain future, their hearts laden with sorrow and regret, yet their spirits filled with determination to make amends for the wrongs that had torn their family apart. Following the solemn ceremony of laying Princess Attica to rest, the kingdom was shrouded in a heavy blanket of grief. The king and queen, burdened by the weight of their guilt, recognized that they could not undo the mistakes of the past, but they were resolute in their quest for forgiveness and redemption for the sins that had torn their family apart. With heavy hearts and tear-filled eyes, the royal family, accompanied by the chief priest and a group of elders, embarked on a journey back to the village of Aditi, laden with gifts of gold and other treasures they hoped to use to atone for the wrongs inflicted upon UMWA and her family were in their thoughts as they approached the village. The air was thick with tension and uncertainty. The people of Atiti, still reeling from the injustice done to their daughter, observed with weary eyes as the royal entourage drew near. To their surprise and relief, the villagers chose to welcome them with open arms. Led by the elders, they greeted the king and queen with nods of acceptance and understanding, their faces softened by the realization that forgiveness was within reach. The royal family made their way to M's family home, where her mother and father awaited them with heavy hearts, tears streaming down their faces. King Ag and Queen A fell to their knees before the grieving parents, their voices choked with emotion as they pleaded for mercy. "We are deeply sorry for the pain and suffering we have caused you," Queen A said, her voice trembling with remorse. "Please find it in your hearts to forgive us." The parents, still mourning their lost daughter, were touched by the sincerity of the royal couple's words. With heavy hearts, they nodded their heads in forgiveness and urged the king and queen to rise. "We cannot undo the past," M's father said, his voice filled with sorrow, "but we choose to let go of our anger and bitterness. May peace be upon us all." With tears of gratitude in their eyes, the king and queen presented the gifts they had brought as a token of their remorse and appreciation. The villagers watched in silence as the treasures were laid at the feet of M's family, symbolizing the royal family's commitment to making amends for the wrongs that had been done. After bidding farewell to the people of Atiti, the royal family returned to their own village, their hearts lighter than they had been in many days. Although the wounds of the past would never fully heal, they understood that forgiveness was the first step on the long road to redemption. As they returned to their village, a sense of relief washed over the royal family. However, their initial shock transformed into joy upon seeing Princess Adamma standing before them. Her previously bloated figure was now restored to its former beauty, and with tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks, she rushed to embrace her parents. The burden she had carried was finally lifted. "Mama, Papa, I am back to normal," she exclaimed, her voice brimming with emotion. King Agwe and Queen Quina held their daughter tightly, overwhelmed with gratitude and relief. Although their hearts still ached for the loss of Adako, witnessing Adamma's recovery instilled hope that their sins had been absolved. "We are immensely grateful, my child," Queen Quina said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for returning to us." As they celebrated Adamma's recovery, a pang of sadness lingered for their beloved daughter, who was no longer with them. Adamma mourned the absence of her sister, wishing fervently that Adako could have been present to witness her transformation. Yet, amidst the bittersweet nature of their reunion, the royal family found solace in the understanding that they had been granted a second chance, a chance to rectify the mistakes of the past and to forge a brighter future together. Determined to atone for their wrongdoings, King Agwe and Queen Quina sought forgiveness from the villagers for the pain they had inflicted. In time, Peace was restored to the kingdom as the wounds of the past began to heal. As Adamma matured into a young woman, she married a kind and compassionate man. Her father decided to pass on the mantle of leadership to her and her husband, who was a wise and just ruler, beloved by the people. Under their guidance, the kingdom thrived as love and kindness triumphed over darkness and despair. Thus, as the years went by, Adamma and her husband governed the kingdom with wisdom and compassion, their reign characterized by prosperity and harmony. Although the story had reached its conclusion, the lessons learned and the bonds formed would endure forever in the hearts of the people. The narrative serves as a testament to the strength of forgiveness, highlighting the enduring resilience of the human spirit. The tale of Princess Adamma imparts numerous significant lessons, with one of the most crucial being the value of forgiveness. In this story, Princess Adamma's family commits an error in the past by treating someone unjustly. As a result of this misstep, Princess Adamma endures suffering and hardship. However, rather than evading their mistakes, her family confronts them and seeks forgiveness from those they have wronged. They express genuine remorse and strive to make amends, demonstrating that it is never too late to seek forgiveness. Furthermore, they illustrate that forgiveness possesses immense power, capable of fostering healing and redemption for both the seeker and the forgiver. Another vital lesson conveyed is the significance of family and love. Despite the obstacles they encounter, Princess Adamma's family remains united and supportive of one another, showcasing that love and solidarity can help us navigate even the most challenging times. Ultimately, the story emphasizes the potential for redemption. Despite their previous errors, Princess Adamma's family diligently works to rectify their wrongs. They exemplify that regardless of how dire circumstances may appear, we always possess the ability to transform and improve ourselves. In summary, the tale of Princess Adamma encourages us to practice kindness, pursue forgiveness, and maintain hope, even amidst adversity. Thank you for engaging with this remarkable story from African Narratives. If you found it inspiring, please consider supporting us by clicking the like button, sharing it with friends, and leaving a comment below. To discover more captivating stories and learn about diverse cultures, subscribe to African Stories and remember to activate the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. Your support is invaluable and aids us in delivering more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.